कुबेर दिक्पाल जाते,
कवि गोविद कही सके कहाते।
तुम उपकार सुग्रीव ही कीन्हा,
राम मिलाए राज पद दीना।
तुमरे मंत्र विभीषण माना,
लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना।
युग सहस्र योजन पर बानु,
लील्योताहि मधुर बल जानु।
प्रभु मुद्रिका मेले मुख माई,
जलधि लांघि गए अचरज नाई।
दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते,
सुगम अनुग्रह तुम्हरे तेते।
राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे,
भोजन आज्ञा बिनु पैसारे।
सब सुख लहे तुम्हारी सरना,
तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना।
आपन तेज समारो आपे,
तीनों लोक हाथ के कापे।
भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे,
महावीर जब नाम सुनावे।
नाशै रोग हरै सब पीरा,
जपत निरंतर हनुमत वीरा।
संकट से हनुमान छुड़ावे,
मन क्रम वचन ध्यान जो लागे।
सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा,
इनकी काज सकल तुम साजा।
और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे,
सोई अमित जीवन बल पावे।
चारों युग परताप तुम्हारा,
है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा।
साधु संत की तुम रखवारे,
असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे।
अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता,
असवर दीन जानकी माता।
राम रसायन तुमरे पासा,
सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा।
तुमरे भजन राम को भावे,
जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे।
अंत काल रघुपति पुर जाई,
जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाई।
और देवता चेतन धरई,
हनुमत से सर्व सुख करई।
संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा,
जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलबीरा।
जय 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 हनुमान गुसाई,
कृपा करहु गुरुदेव की नाई।
यह शत बार पात कर जोई,
झूठ निबंधि महासुख होई।
जो यह पर हनुमान चालीसा,
होई सिद्धि साखी गौरी सा।
तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा,
कीजय नाथ हृदय महाडेरा।
पवन तनय संकट हरन, मंगल मूर्ति रूप, राम लखन सीता सहित हृदय बसु सुरभूप। पवन सुत हनुमान की जय, पवन सुत हनुमान की जय, पवन सुत हनुमान की जय।
प्रेम से बोले महावीर स्वामी की जय। This morning we have come together notwithstanding As I said, the inclement weather, which has affected many persons in terms of their traversing the pathway to come to the Mandir, and for that reason, we are depleted physically with numbers this morning, but notwithstanding that, we still have that vigor, that verve, and indeed that devotion, as was evidenced in our glorification of Hanumanji through the verses of Hanuman Chalisa. Let us now just sit upright for a moment, join our palms together as we engage in pratna. Hari Om Karpura Gauram Karunavataram Sansar Saram Bhujagendraharam Saravasantam Hridayarvinde Bhavam Bhavani Sahitam Namami Bhavam Bhavani Sahitam Namami Bhavam Bhavani Sahitam Namami. Prem se boli Mahapati Mahadeva ki jai. Welcome once more to each and everyone, both those who are here physically and those who are viewing us online. As I mentioned before, we have with us two visitors from Florida, the grandchildren of Uncle Ajoda, and we extend a warm welcome to them. We also have a young man who is visiting with us from Toronto, Canada, Mr. Daniram Ramnath, so we want to extend a warm welcome to him as well. These visitors are with us, and particularly I know Daniram views us when he is in Toronto every Sunday. So Daniram, we're glad to have you with us physically here at the Mandir, and may Bhagwan continue to bless you. This morning our pravachan will be geared very briefly to the upcoming observance on Wednesday of Guru Purnima. Throughout the country, you have various programs being celebrated, very many occasions. For example, yesterday, the Bharatiya Vidya Sansthan had their Guru Purnima celebrations here at the Mandir. Prashantji, who you just had the benefit of hearing, the principal of one of the schools, was instrumental in organizing and putting that program together. And many persons, many students, paid tribute to their Guruji, the late Professor Harishankar Adesh, through the renditions that they would have had and so on. The mark that has left by Guruji in this country is indelible. His decades and decades of service, marked by so many talented artists and so many talented individuals that have benefited from his tutelage. Right here at the Mandir, quite apart from Prashant, we've had the benefit of persons like the late Dexter Raghunanan, who started off his career as a tabla player under the guidance of Professor Adeshji. And there's so many others, those who are present here as well, benefiting from that. And that Guru Parampara tradition in all facets is something very important. So this morning, we'll speak a little bit about that, but from a different angle. Because this Wednesday, we will be having our own observance of Guru Purnima here at the Mandir. We will be having puja from 4:30, and the discourse on that evening will be geared towards the observance of Guru Purnima. This morning, however, especially having just concluded Hanuman Chalisa, I want to speak a little bit about Brahmachari or Brahmacharya. So in Hindu tradition, we know of the 4 ashrams or 4 stages. First starts off with the Brahmachari stage. Then you move to the Grihast. Then you have Vanaprastha and Sannyas as the final stage. Those are the ashrams or stages of life that have been designated that we should all adhere to. And there's much wisdom in that designation, and there's much wisdom in terms of pursuing those various stages, as we will allude to. But when we speak about the Guru Siksha relationship, we speak very often about the Chela or the Sishya who is engaged in Brahmachari. And if you were to ask any of the young ones, you know, what do you understand by the term Brahmachari? Very often you get various responses. The most popular one that we will get is someone who is celibate, meaning one who abstains from the engagement in sensual pleasures and so on. And for that very reason, when we speak about Hanumanji, we very often equate Hanumanji with the epitome of Brahmachari. But brahmachari or brahmacharya stage is not really designated exclusively to young persons growing up in their pursuit of secular and non-secular training. It means more than that. And so to say, for example, that Hanumanji is the epitome of being a brahmachari is very correct. We just sang the verses of Hanuman Chalisa, and one of the verses went, Vidyavan guni ati chatur Rama kaj karive ko atur. Hanumanji is the master of all knowledge. He's full of virtue and filled with wisdom. He's always eager to serve Prabhu Shri Ram. That is what that verse translates to. So if we say that Hanumanji is the epitome of brahmachari, and think of Hanumanji, you have the icon of him right behind me. He is not a young person. You know, very often we equate, okay, between 0 and 25, you're brahmachari. From the time you get married, like Mitra, well, then you move into grihastashram. And that's the way which we would normally speak to things like that. But that is not entirely correct. Because brahmachari doesn't refer only to a stage, it refers to certain qualities and certain tendencies which we all, regardless of our stage in life, should seek to inculcate. And if we do so successfully, if we are successful in engaging and inculcating those tendencies, then what we will have will be Vidyavan guni ati chatur Rama kaj karive ko atur. We would be the master of all knowledge. We would be filled with virtue and wisdom. And most importantly, we will always be eager to serve Bhagwan. And this is the pursuit that those qualities of being a brahmachari would facilitate and would allow us to accomplish. Now, what does that mean practically? Just recently, we've had the observation about performance of young persons in society, and particularly with reference to the SEA exams. And I spoke about this last week, where the results of those children, and again, look at the ages, you're looking between 10 to 12, the results have showed a very marked decline in performance academically. There's much concern about that. So much so that millions of dollars are now being spent for remedial sessions for these young persons over this particular August break and beyond. Beyond that, we saw a very tragic situation where several young persons in a vehicle were returning from a particular activity. There was some altercation with the police, and at the end of it all, 3 of those persons in that vehicle died. Protests, you had the blocking of the highways in Port of Spain, and many persons being very concerned as a result of that type of behavior in reaction to that shooting of the police. Then beyond that, we've had a comment recently being reported in the media from the Prime Minister that a number of the problems facing our young people are as a result of a breakdown in parenting. So all of these things are coming at us in rapid succession. And brothers and sisters, when we speak here in the Mandir, we are really speaking to the converted. We are speaking to those persons who are adhering to the tenets of what ought to be done. And in so doing, are molding yourselves, your children, your families, into the type of individuals and the type of citizens that is desired. Persons who can add value, persons who can contribute. And therefore, this discussion about brahmachari and the qualities of being brahmachari are very important. Because brahmachari equates, to my mind, with one word that is all-encompassing, and that is discipline. Discipline. The discipline that is required of a student, I'm sure we all know. And very often that discipline is focused in the school and the academic environment. What do I mean by that? Almost all right-thinking parents will be very eager to ensure that their children are registered into a school, starting with kindergarten, preschool, moving all the way up. I can't think of any right-thinking parent that doesn't believe that. You will ensure as best as you can to your own detriment that all of the requirements of that child, of that student are provided. Their books, their uniform, their meals, things of that nature. As I mentioned last week, we even go to the extreme to make sure they're in every single lessons that there could be so that they will be ensured that success, whether it is an SEA, CSEC, or CAPE examinations. That's the way we've been inculcated. That's the discipline that has been inculcated in us as far as education is concerned. And when we trace historically our foreparents and where they came from, we can understand why that sense of discipline was very important and remains with us today, because our foreparents as indentured immigrants recognized quite forcefully and quite rightly that the pursuit of an education and the obtaining of that education was the pathway towards success materially. It was the pathway towards living and enjoying a materially comfortable life. And we have that evident before us now. Think of the journey from the barracks to where we are now. Think of the material pleasures that we enjoy now that were not there. And you don't have to look very far. Just look at where you are sitting today, this morning. In a concrete, glass, decorated, air-conditioned environment. Back in 1950, 1951, it was a mud kutia that stayed here. So that evolution materially through that discipline is very evident. But alas, that sense of discipline sometimes stops there for many persons, and I'm not speaking about anybody here. But that discipline is supposed to go beyond the mere academic pursuits. The discipline that is required for the pursuit of becoming that brahmachari also requires us to be disciplined in our spiritual pursuits. And we must ask ourselves this question: are we equally vigorous in our pursuit and in our discipline as far as it relates to our spiritual pursuits? Look around you this morning. Look at the empty spaces on the benches, and then let's ask ourselves, is the rainfall something that would deter us from sending our children to school? And very often, unless it's flooding, we would say no, we would send them to school. But is the rainfall something that would stop us from coming Mandir? And I think the answer is self-evident. So we must ask ourselves, are we equally disciplined in that regard? And not only that, even for those persons who may say, well, okay, I can't come Mandir, and I'm speaking very much so of young persons now, nobody here again. If we say, okay, Hinduism doesn't mandate that we should go Mandir, but there are certain practices that we should engage in on a daily basis, do we have that discipline to do those things? For young people, how many of you get up at 12 o'clock in the day? Or 11 o'clock in the day? That's when your day starts. Again, no aspersions to anybody. But that is a question that we must ask ourselves. And we do that on a regular basis. And as parents, we sometimes allow that on a regular basis. I'm guilty of that. Very often on a Saturday, for example, my children will sleep late. And I say, well, they went to school all week and whatever, and they deserve a break. But is that the correct thing to do consistently? You may have it on a one-off occasion. But that sense of discipline, which then starts to transgress other aspects of our life, is what leads us down to the pathway that we found ourselves in today. The indiscipline that has crept in terms of the things that we ought to do. And think of Hanumanji. I'll keep drawing those parallels. He was always engaged in some positive act of seva as far as the Lord was concerned. And he did that not only by performing puja and so on, he did that in terms of his daily activities. All that he did was always done with the focus of God in mind. And Bhagavad Gita tells us this: every action that we perform should be as an offering to God. It is said to us in Bhagavad Gita. It is said to us in Ramcharitmanas. So therefore, for example, when we get up in the morning, and again it's morning, not after lunch, do we have the discipline to give thanks to God for this gift of life? Do we have the discipline when before we take a morsel of food, to say something as simple as Om Shri Krishna Arpanam, giving thanks to God for the nourishment that has been afforded to us? Do we have the sense of discipline that is required in terms of pursuing our scriptural studies? And what do I mean by that? How many of us, for example, would ensure that our children pick up the scripture, whether it is Bhagavad Gita, whether it is Ramayana, whether it is any other of our multitude of scriptures, and read a little bit from it on a daily basis? Read? Well, that's another soon to become obscene word. We have many persons now are being very averse to reading. And I'm seeing this being exposed to many students now. Again, no offense to the students. But things have evolved in such a way that reading has now become a dying art. And you are seeing the effects of this in terms of being able to communicate in more than just monosyllables. And those are some of the threats that are creeping in by virtue of that indiscipline. Hanumanji tells us as well that discipline must be in our daily activities. Think about something as simple as littering. Do we think twice before we toss something out the window or dispose of it improperly? Do we think any more about, is this something that should be recycled or reused? That is a sense of discipline. When we are on the roadways and byways, how do we drive? You know, where I live, I have to venture out and there's a traffic light. It's right by Laramie, near by the Roman Catholic Church there. I'm sure you all know the traffic light I'm talking about. And very often I am stopped at the filtering light, which is red, before I can turn. And the main thoroughfare is green. And every single day, when I'm stopped at that light, and the light turns to red on the thoroughfare, there are at least several vehicles breaking that red light. And all I'm doing in that car is praying, God, I hope nobody not coming from the other side, because that's going to be a major disaster. And I've seen more than one accident occurring there. And why? Because there's that sense of indiscipline on our roadways, and we see it. I'm sure Darren goes up on the highway every day, and the shoulder of the highway, which is really meant for emergency purposes, has now virtually become another lane. It has become another lane. The other day, I may have mentioned this before, I was in traffic. We were gridlocked on the highway. There were 2 emergency vehicles, 2 ambulances coming up the road, and therefore persons, as you're obliged to do, pull to the side to allow that emergency vehicle to go through. And that emergency vehicle is going through, and there's a guy with a B12 hugging the bumper of that emergency vehicle so he too could illegally do what he's doing. And you know what amazed me? That in doing that, he passed a policeman who was right in one of the highway bays, looking very important, an official, presumably there to ensure that the laws of the road are enforced, and didn't stop the man at all. So if those types of lawlessness and indiscipline are not being dealt with in the way they ought to, then that further descends. And that's why we will have things like protests and blocking roads and that kind of behavior, because there's the indiscipline that caused the whole incident, and there's the indiscipline in the reaction. And maybe justifiably, because people are frustrated. I was frustrated when I saw that person doing that and the policeman not doing his job. I was very frustrated by that. Imagine if someone that's close to you, their life is taken away in what you consider to be unjust. I could understand that frustration. And therefore, that discipline that is required is something that is also very much relevant in our day-to-day activities. And we could speak about that in terms of what we eat, in terms of our exercising habits, in terms of all of those things, in terms of the way we speak to persons. that sense of discipline is important. Think about Hanumanji again. In Kishkinda Kand, his first meeting with Prabhu Shri Ram and Lakshman Bhaiya, when he was sent by Sugriv to go and ascertain who they were. His first meeting, what struck Prabhu Shri Ram was the manner in which Hanumanji spoke. And his comment was, "You are dressed in this particular garb, but your manner of speech seems to suggest someone who is highly knowledgeable, highly educated, and has statesman-like qualities." How do we speak to people, brothers and sisters? How do we speak to our spouses? How do we speak to our children? How do we speak to our co-workers? How do we speak to our superiors or our subordinates? How do we speak to a stranger on the street? Do we have that sense of discipline in terms of what we do? And then finally, that sense of discipline, that brahmachari, really should pervade our thoughts as well. Do we have that discipline in the way in which we think? Because remember, our thoughts drive our actions. Do we allow this mind, which is so chanchal, very much like a Vanar, to be in the ascendancy and to control our behavior, our emotions, and indeed our actions? Or do we have that sense of discipline that is required to control our thoughts? To control our thoughts. Because you see, once that thought is planted, invariably, unless it is controlled, it will result in an action. And if that thought is a negative thought, then what type of action do you think is going to come as a result of that? And as we said before, sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reach a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. So it starts with the thought. So this morning, tying in with this concept of brahmachari and that sense of discipline that is required, comes the celebration of Guru Purnima. And for one of the things, or one of the elements that our gurus would teach us is that sense of discipline. Uncle Ajoda, a retired educator, and he would say one of the most important tendencies that is required of any student and teacher in a classroom in order to be successful is that discipline. Is the teacher there and prepared? Are the students there and prepared? And are they both with that sense of discipline that will facilitate learning? That starts with discipline. So in that type of environment, discipline is important. Similarly, in our spiritual environment, that discipline. And when, for example, students of music and dance are being trained by a guru, one of the most important things that they will be told to do, quite apart from respecting their instruments, is that element of discipline to ensure that they continue to practice. I remember the mantra the late Dexter Raghunandan used to tell to all of his tabla students, and I think Rakesh was a tabla student with Dexter. And what was that mantra? 3 words: practice, practice, practice. Always said it. And that was the discipline that he evidenced in his own life as an individual and as a tabla player. And that was the expectation that he had of all of his students. And that is the same that you find throughout. Spiritual gurus, when you are doing your Guru Diksha, one of the important culminating points is the giving of the mantra, the Guru Mantra. And invariably and most forcefully, the Guru would tell the Chela, this mantra will only be effective and efficacious if you jape that mantra, meaning that you continue to recite your mantra. And anybody who's been initiated, I'm positive your Guruji would have told you that. Why? Because in japing that mantra, you start to control your thoughts. You know, in this day and age, in the 21st century, we are bombarded by so many instantaneous things, particularly electronically, that it pervades our thoughts. People can't sleep because of it. They're suffering from anxiety and depression because of it, all because we are unable to control our thoughts. That discipline is being eroded. And therefore, when you recite that mantra continuously and consistently, that sense of discipline is once more restored. So I would urge, as I conclude, to install that sense of discipline in our lives in all facets, to ensure that we in fact attain that example of what it means to be a brahmachari in terms of our thought, in terms of our speech, in terms of our action, that will develop us holistically, that we should indeed give very much serious consideration to a simple thing that we could all do, and that is mantra japam. Simple thing, everybody could do it. Whichever mantra you find endearing. And so this morning, as I conclude, I want us all to engage in that process by chanting together that most powerful mantra, Gayatri Mantra. Swamiji, when I was with him a couple months ago, mentioned or suggested to me, he says, when you're chanting the Gayatri Mantra, and I would like you all to just look in my direction, and we know the words of the Gayatri Mantra. He says when you chant, Om, while you are chanting Om, visualize that you are surrounding yourself with positive energy. Om. When you then begin your mantra, visualize that you are moving that energy upwards, firstly to your navel area. Om Bhur Bhuvasvaha. So it stops there. Then as you continue on, visualize that energy moving up to your heart. Tat Savitur Varinyam. Then continue on to your throat. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Then move upwards to your third eye area. Dio Yonaha. And then to the Sahasradam, or the crest of your head. Prachodayat. So watch my hand. As you recite the mantras, and as you do so, visualize the power of that mantra pervading your entire being. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varinyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yonah Prachodayat. Join with me now as we recite this mantra 5 times. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varinyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yonah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varinyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yonah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varinyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yonah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varinyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yonah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varinyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yonah Prachodayat. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavabhai Tejasvinabharitamastu Ma Vishabhai. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. I would commend to each and every one on a daily basis, if you can, to chant Gayatri Mantra. Fix a time, whether it's the morning or whether it is the Sunday hour, the evening. And at least 3 times. If you could do more, then do more, but at least 3 times. And as you are chanting, be mindful of how you are chanting. And have that shraddha or faith in your chanting. And know that when you do that, your entire being is energized. But most importantly, your thoughts and your decision making and your power of reasoning and discrimination will be uplifted and edified to your benefit in all that you do. You will see the change. Just be consistent about it. You know, for those persons who like to go to gym, they will tell you, if you want to start that habit and make sure it's consistent, do it for 21 days consistently. 21 days without stopping. Do it. And it will then become part of you. I'll toss out that challenge this morning. I want everybody to be chanting that Gayatri mantra for 21 days and see what happens at the end. Don't tell me about it, but see for yourself the difference it makes in your life. I know it did in mine. So I now invite you all to come forward and to engage in your arati. Before you do so, with Vishnu's leave, I'll just do the announcements now because we don't have that many people. So basically, we would want to extend invitation to everyone for the upcoming events that the Mandir will be hosting and observing. And that starts this Wednesday from 4:30 p.m. when we'll be having puja for Guru Purnima. So you're invited to attend that puja on Wednesday. Beyond that, we will be moving into the observance of Ganesh Utsav, and we will be having Gauri Mata Puja. Prior to that, we are looking tentatively at the 1st of August, but you will get more information on that. Thereafter, Raksha Bandhan will be celebrated in mid-August. And after that, you will have the observation and the celebration of Krishna Janmashtami, which will take place on the 18th of August. And you will get more information as to the format of that program. With the restrictions having been removed, we should be reverting to what we traditionally, the manner in which we traditionally would have observed Janmashtami in past years. So that's upcoming. And then beyond that, on the 30th of August will mark the beginning of the Ganesh Utsav celebration. We will have the Murti being brought the Sunday before the 30th to the Mandir, and then the Pran Pratishtha will take place on the 30th, and then we move straight into Ganesh Utsav celebrations with evening satsangs and so on. We'll be having yagya for the last couple nights. We will settle those nights shortly and let you know. And we will culminate with Visarjan on the morning of the 9th of September. So on the morning of the 9th will be our Visarjan ceremony. And again, you will be informed of the details. So many things that are upcoming to engage us all in. And we look forward to seeing you all at those various events, either physically, preferably, or for those of you who are unable to. So like when our guests return back to Florida, Danny Ram returns back to Toronto, you could view us online for those celebrations. Again, those of you who would like to give any donations or make any contributions towards the upkeep and maintenance of the Mandir, we will truly appreciate that. So those of you who are here, you could see any member of the management committee who are here this morning. Our assistant treasurer, Roger, is here. You can speak with him. Those of you who would like to sit to perform Hawano Puja, you can see Mrs. Umrao, who is now leading our bhajan group this morning, and give your names if you would like to do that. Or if you want to give contributions towards any of the upcoming events, we would greatly appreciate that as well. The religious committee meeting that I had originally scheduled for this morning will be deferred to next week. We will have that scheduled there for obvious reasons. And we will be engaging in the planning, particularly of Ganesh Utsav, at that meeting. Finally, those persons who would want to purchase t-shirts or anything of that nature, Mandir t-shirts, you can see Mr. Babulal after the service. And we also have Puja Samagri that is on sale, which we are trying to close that venture off. So we have some remaining items, we have some murtis and so on. So anybody who would like to patronize and purchase, you could just see our Pujari after service right at the back, and you can patronize if you want any Hawan items for your homes or things of that nature. They are available. As you come forward, I know the mask mandate is supposed to be removed on the 17th, but not for religious celebrations and observances. So we're still asking you to please sanitize, to wear the disposable gloves as you go forward, please still try to maintain the physical spacing and distancing. And when you're complete with your arti, dispose of your gloves, sanitize once more, and then resume your seats. I hand over to members of our group, and they will lead us now in kirtan as you come forward to perform your arti. Sitaram Ol.
मासतो मासदगमे तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे मासतो मासरगमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे मासतो मासदगमे तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे मासतो मासरगमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे पीड़ाओं से मुक्ति मिले निर्मल जीवन कमल खिले पीड़ाओं से मुक्ति मिले निर्मल जीवन कमल खिले रहे मृत्यु का रंजन में तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे मासतो मासरगमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे अंधकार का कर संहार जरता पर भी करो प्रहार अंधकार का कर संहार जरता पर भी करो प्रहार सदा ज्योति की ही हो जय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे मासतो मासरगमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे करो तृप्त मां ज्ञान शुरा देकर आश्रय प्रेम शुरा करो तृप्त मां ज्ञान शुरा देकर अक्षय प्रेम सुधा कर दो जीवन अमृत में तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे मासतो मासरगमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमे जीवन में दुख रहे न ले स्वर्ग बने वसुधा देश जीवन में दुख रहे न ले स्वर्ग बनी वसुधा देश सांस सांस हो मंगल में तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मासतो मासरगमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय
ओम एकदंताय वेदने वक्रतुंडाय धीमहि तन्नो दन्ति प्रचोदयात् स्वाहा ओम श्री
राम भज मन
राम राम श्री राम भज मन राम राम श्री राम श्री माता पिता भगनी सुत दारा साथ न जाएगा जग सारा
माता पिता भगनी सुत दारा साथ न जाएगा जग सारा
माता पिता भगनी सुत दारा साथ न जाएगा जग सारा
माता पिता भगनी सुत दारा साथ न जाएगा जग सारा
कूच करेगा जब बंजारा चोर सकल धन दाम भज मन
राम राम श्री राम भज मन राम राम श्री राम
श्री राम श्री राम श्री राम भज मन
राम राम श्री राम भज मन राम राम श्री राम
जिसने भी की प्रभु पर शंका भज न सका फिर उसका दंगा
जिसने भी की प्रभु पर शंका बज न सका फिर उसका डंका
जिसने भी की प्रभु पर शंका भज न सका फिर उसका दंगा
जिसने भी की प्रभु पर शंका बज न सका फिर उसका डंका
भस्म हुई सोने की लंका पल भर में अभिराम भज मन
राम राम श्री राम भज मन राम राम श्री राम
श्री राम श्री राम श्री राम भज मन राम राम श्री राम भज मन राम राम श्री राम शिव नारायण सूर कबीरा बजा बजा एक तार मजीरा
शिव नारायण सूर कबीरा बजा बजा एक तार मजीरा
शिव नारायण सूर कबीरा बजा बजा एक तार मजीरा
शिव नारायण सूर कबीरा बजा बजा एक तार मजीरा
अमर हो गए तुलसी मीरा ले ले कर हरि नाम भज मन
राम राम श्री राम भज मन राम राम श्री राम
श्री राम श्री राम श्री राम भज मन
राम राम श्री राम भज मन राम राम श्री राम
इस माया पर मान न कर तू काया पर अभिमान न कर तू,
इस माया पर मान न कर तू, काया पर अभिमान न कर तू,
इस माया पर मान न कर तू, काया पर अभिमान न कर तू,
इस माया पर मान न कर तू, काया पर अभिमान न कर तू,
भज आदेश नाम प्रभु का तू, निषिद्ध न तो याम भज मन,
राम राम श्री राम भज मन, राम राम श्री राम, श्री राम श्री राम, श्री राम भज मन, राम राम श्री राम भज मन, राम राम श्री राम
भज मन,
राम राम श्री राम।
जय त्रिपुरारी भवभयहारी दुःखहारी हर नमः शिवाय।
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 नमः शिवाय हर नमः शिवाय।
नमः शिवाय हर नमः शिवाय।
जय त्रिपुरारी भवभयहारी दुःखहारी हर नमः शिवाय।
जय त्रिपुरारी भवभयहारी दुःखहारी हर नमः शिवाय।
बाल सुशोभित निर्मल गंगा,
बाल सुशोभित निर्मल गंगा,
परिकंठ में माल भुजंगा,
परिकंठ में माल भुजंगा,
गौरी गात विभूति विराजे,
गोरे गात विभूत विराजे,
मृगछालायुत शरीर गंगा,
मृगछालायुत शरीर नंगा।
जय गिरीश, जय गिरीश, जय महाईश जगदीश,
ईश हर नमः शिवाय। जय त्रिपुरारी भवभयहारी दुःखहारी हर नमः शिवाय।
मस्तक पर चंद्रमा विराजे,
मस्तक पर चंद्रमा विराजे,
मोक्ष प्रदायक नेत्र सुहावे,
मोक्ष प्रदायक नेत्र सुहावे,
एक हाथ में त्रिशूल धारी,
एक हाथ में त्रिशूल धारे,
दूजे कर में डमरू साजे,
दूजे वर में डमरू बाजे।
जय भीम,
त्रिपुरारी भवभयहारी दुःखहारी हर नमः शिवाय
नमः शिवाय हर नमः शिवाय
नमः शिवाय हर नमः शिवाय
जय त्रिपुरारी भवभयहारी दुःखहारी हर नमः शिवाय
जय त्रिपुरारी भवभयहारी दुःखहारी हर नमः शिवाय
जय त्रिपुरारी भवभयहारी दुःखहारी हर नमः शिवाय
Prem Boli Mahapati Mahadev Ki Jai. Before we stand for final arati, just two brief observations. One, I want to extend congratulations to a young man, former president of the youth group of the Mandir, young Darial Ramharak, who consistently throughout, including this year, has made the dean's list at the university. And this year we want to extend congratulations to Darial again for making the dean's list. That is an example of the discipline that I was speaking about. Darial not only found time to excel and to persevere in his academic pursuits, but like we said, he's former president of the youth group of the Mandir and has been consistently here together with his parents and relatives at the Mandir. So Darial, congratulations to you. Continue to be the wonderful young man that you are, the disciplined young man that you are, and the example to the other young persons at the Mandir. I also want to extend birthday greetings to a young person who is young in looks, young in age, and indeed young in ethos. And I'm speaking of none other than Kavir Ramsumir, who celebrates his birthdays. Happy birthday, Kavir, as you celebrate your birthday. May Bhagwan bless you. To all other persons who may be celebrating their birthday, who may be celebrating anniversaries or other special occasions, Bhagwanji's blessings. May you continue to enjoy success, happiness, peace, good health, and prosperity. We all now stand for our Arti Bhajan to be followed by closing prayer.
जय जगदीश हरि स्वामी जय जगदीश हरि भक्त जनों के संकट दास जनों के संकट क्षण में दूर करे ओम जय जगदीश हरि पल पावे दुख बिन से मन का स्वामी दुख बिन से मन का सुख संपत्ति घर आवे सुख संपत्ति घर आवे कष्ट मिटे तन का ओम जय जगदीश हरि मात पिता तुम मेरे शरण कहूँ किसकी स्वामी शरण कहूँ किसकी तुम बिन और न दूजा तुम बिन और न दूजा आश करो जिसकी ओम जय जगदीश हरि जगदीश हरे परमात्मा तुम अंतर्यामी स्वामी तुम अंतर्यामी पार ब्रह्म परमेश्वर पार ब्रह्म परमेश्वर तुम सबके स्वामी ओम जय जगदीश हरे विषय विकार मिटाओ पाप हरो देवा स्वामी पाप हरो देवा श्रद्धा भक्ति बढ़ाओ श्रद्धा भक्ति बढ़ाओ संतन की सेवा ओम जय जगदीश हरे जन्म मन धन सब है तेरा, स्वामी सब कुछ है तेरा। तेरा तुझको अर्पण, तेरा तुझको अर्पण, प्याला गे मेरा। ओम जय जगदीश हरे, जय जगदीश हरे, स्वामी जय जगदीश हरे। भक्त जनों के संकट, दास जनों के संकट, क्षण में दूर करे। ओम जय जगदीश हरे, ओम जय जगदीश हरे, ओम जय जगदीश हरे।
Hari Om. As we conclude our puja and our satsang this morning, O Prabhu, we've come before you as your children to surrender ourselves to you and to your will. You are all merciful, you are all compassionate. Through you, all things are possible. This morning, as we offer our pratna, as we offer our love to you, we pray for the well-being of not only ourselves and our family members, but, O Prabhu, we pray as well for those persons who may be sick, those persons who may be ailing, for those persons who've lost their loved ones, for those persons who have lost a sense of direction, who may be feeling anxious, depressed, and without any hope for the future. O Prabhu, instill in their lives and in their mind that strength and that courage to continue on. You are mother, you are father, you are family, you are friend, you are knowledge, you are wealth, you are everything to us. We surrender ourselves completely. Let us all join together now in one voice in closing prayer. Hari Om. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhu Cha Sika Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Om Asatu Ma Sadgamaya Dhammasu Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. प्रेम से बोले श्री गणेश भगवान की जय, उमापति महादेव की जय, बिंद्रावन बिहारी लाल की जय, आज शक्ति जगदम्बा देवी मैया की जय, श्री पवन पुत्र हनुमान की जय, प्रेम से बोले श्री सच्चे सनातन धर्म की जय। To introduce around you, सबको जय सीताराम, जय सीताराम, जय सीताराम. May you have a very safe, very powerful and very productive week ahead. We look forward to seeing you all with us on Wednesday evening at 4:30 and then again next Sunday at 8:30 a.m. for satsang and for our service. Jai Sitaram, everyone. Jai Sitaram. Thank you to members of our group for the wonderful job you did this morning. Congratulations to you all. Yes, they deserve a round of applause.